It happened last Saturday. It was late evening, and I, as usual, was sitting at the computer preparing material for a new episode, when I suddenly received a message from my friend Matt, saying, "Hey dude, how's it going? Are you at home? I'm coming over. I'll be there in an hour. I've got this really crazy story to tell you about a guy who was swallowed by an anaconda. No shit, I kid you not, it's gonna blow your mind." How could I say no to that? Matt is a rather colorful character, and quite the raconteur. He seems to make a point of hanging out with all sorts of different freaks, weirdos, and other assorted oddballs. He always recounts to me the wildest, craziest, and most outlandish stories he gets from this bizarre assortment of human beings he counts as his friends. You have no idea the endless number of totally insane stories I've heard during my time knowing this guy Matt. And it's not as if I dislike these stories or anything, but I have to say that I really do get truly freaked out sometimes. I mean, I get goosebumps and my hair stands on end from his retelling of some of the gory and creepy details. Though fortunately, I think these stories are probably just pure fantasy. Very realistic, but still fantasy. I think so. I mean, they must be. Well, I can't say 100% one way or the other for sure. Anyway, almost all of our mutual friends believe every single word of every story he tells, and they call me a skeptic. Matt and I had a heated discussion regarding his latest story. I argued that there were several inconsistencies and uncertainties. Matt, on the other hand, vehemently argued, as usual, that everything was 100% pure, unadulterated truth. So I had an idea. Who, if not you, my dear viewers, could better judge the veracity of this tale and help us sort truth from fiction in this mystifying modern-day instant legend? And after watching the video, please give a thumbs up if you like this new format. Okay, back to the story Matt told me that night. Whether out of boredom or from an irresistible urge to revel in doing something exotic and irrational, one Mr. Richard Harris, an ordinary accountant from New York City, suddenly decides to go to South America in search of a giant anaconda. Yes, that's right, an anaconda. His friends all politely tell him his idea is pretty out there, and it is a nutso idea. To most people anyway, but not to Mr. Harris. I just can't figure out how this guy thinks it's worth it to just go traipsing off into the Amazon to get himself an anaconda. I mean, the guy's an accountant for crikey's sake, right? I'm thinking he's going to be hard-pressed to even tell the difference between, say, a computer mouse and a big-ass jungle rat, let alone a 30-foot-long snake. A 9-meter-long monster like this is not what you find in a terrarium at your local pet store. But anyway, listen, so Richard, or should we call him Dick? No, let's call him Dickie. Dickie believed that what he learned about snakes on the internet was more than enough. So, what started this all, Dickie learned that the New York Zoological Society was offering $50,000, a pretty tidy sum, I gotta admit, for a 30-foot or 9-meter-long anaconda. So Dick immediately packs his bags and flies off to Brazil for what he thinks at that moment is going to be easy money. Dick, though, he's a numbers man, right? So he figures in that big, smart calculator brain of his that splitting the money with anyone else is a bad idea. The prospect even frightens him. He wants it all to himself. He's obviously got some kind of plans for this 50G. So he decides to do without the help of professionals, or a guide, or anyone at all who knows anything about the jungle or the river. So the dude goes in alone on an old rented boat, dreaming, I'm sure, of the stacks of cash or gold doubloons or whatever he's gonna get. Anyway, a few hours later, still puttering along in his boat on the waters of the greatest river in South America, our hero doesn't really pay much attention to the sun setting. The nearest settlement is at least 15 miles away. That's about 24 kilometers. And there's a jaguar roaring somewhere not too far away, hinting that it's probably not a good idea to approach the shore. The situation finally starts getting to Mr. Harris. He's used to a somewhat more comfortable existence. So he smacks his paddle down in a fit of frustration and maybe even a bit of anger, whereupon he gets a giant splinter in the palm of his hand. He sees the blood, feels a little woozy, pulls out this enormous splinter, and reflexively dips his bleeding hand into the water. But as the local Indians say, and I may be paraphrasing here, do not stick your bloody wounded hand into the piranha-infested Amazon River. It's just not a good idea. These monsters aren't really dangerous if you don't have any bleeding scratches or cuts on your body. But in the case of having something like a gushing, bleeding wound, well, these predatory fish quite easily smell the blood. If your whole body's in the water, you're unlikely to even have enough time to swim to the shore before being eaten alive. Dick also realizes something like this when his forefinger and thumb are suddenly and painfully clenched in the sharp-toothed, powerful jaws of a piranha. So Dickie here, well, I'm guessing due to fear, or perhaps just plain jungle accountant clumsiness, Dickie falls overboard. Fortunately for him, he's only a few feet away from the muddy shoreline. So our intrepid and fearless first-time snake hunter accountant manages to get on shore alive, unlike his thumb, which remains in the mouth of the predatory fish. But Harris, who's lying on the grass, doesn't give a hoot about his lost finger. The main thing is that he survived and that nothing else augurs any trouble. And everything seems like it's gonna be okay. Except, of course, for the giant anaconda, which is just 5 feet away. That's about 1.5 meters, and is staring directly at Dickie, our jungle tourist. Something tells me that Mr. Harris isn't thinking about the money any longer at this moment. But there isn't really any time to think of pretty much anything. Our intrepid urban office hunter remembers what he's supposed to do in such a situation, something he learned from some random website. So Dickie lays down flat on his back on the ground, ramrod straight, in the hope that the snake will try to eat him feet first, so that our hero can then attack the predator with a knife. This is how the instructions on the website stated one should fight off a giant man-eating snake. But alas, despite his excellent sense of humor, Dickie didn't understand that the article was nothing more than a joke, and that trying to fight a snake this way, you'll only accelerate the time it takes for the snake to get you into its stomach. And besides, anacondas are practice killers and are not very likely to start eating a person beginning with their feet. Normally, these mega snakes first envelop their victim's body, constricting around it, whereupon they break all of the victim's bones and squeeze out all the available air in their lungs. It's then that an anaconda will begin to consume their meal, normally starting from the head. This fate would await Mr. Harris as well, if not for the guinea pig. What guinea pig, you may ask? When Dickie ran for his life to the shore, he stomped and stumbled across a leftover chunk of dead capybara, which is a giant guinea pig the size of a wild boar. This animal is a quite common meal for anacondas. In fact, they love these ersatz rats. Anyhow, upon finding capybara fur on the soles of Dickie's boots, which is like catnip to these giant snakes, the serpent mistakes them for a capybara and begins to devour the boots, and Dickie, gulping him down up to the man's waist. The poor guy continues following the false internet instructions, waiting for his chance to strike. But just at this most crucial moment, he remembers something utterly important. He has no knife. Or rather, it's in the boat, but not on his person. While poor Mr. Harris looks despairingly at his boat drifting near the shore, his body goes deeper and deeper into the snake, to the point where only his head can now be seen. By the way, large snakes like pythons or boas do sometimes eat their victim alive without strangling it to death first. It's just fairly rare. To be honest, I imagine that Dickie tried to resist, but normally any squirming attempts to escape provoke these snakezillas into strangling their victim. But apparently, Mr. Harris just turns out to be one of those lucky ones who are swallowed alive. Or is he unlucky? It depends how you look at it. Nevertheless, at this moment, he already feels like he can barely breathe any longer, and gasping for air, his vision starts to fade. The light going out in his eyes. He begins to hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears, slowing down with each beat. Our snake hunting accountant is feeling his last few moments of consciousness. But before losing consciousness, he remembers a story about a man named Paul Rizzoli. This is a man who, unlike Dick, voluntarily allowed an anaconda to swallow him. Paul spent several hours in the snake's stomach and eventually escaped unscathed. But he was very well prepared. A suit made of carbon fiber material protected Mr. Rizzoli's body from the deadly squeezing and constricting muscles of the anaconda. In addition, a special chemical mixture protected him from the snake's gastric acid, and a tube extended outside the snake, allowing Mr. Rizzoli to breathe. If only Mr. Harris had the same arsenal, everything might turn out differently. But now, finding himself on the interior of the biggest snake on the planet, he can only hope for a miracle. Sometime later, Mr. Harris opens his eyes. Tropical birds are flitting around and sunlight is shining down through the thick leaves of palm trees. This must be paradise, Dickie thinks. I must be dead. But for some reason, his body still hurts. He's breathing heavily and is ridiculously and insanely thirsty. It's when he looks at his feet that he really realizes this is not paradise, and in fact, he's still alive. Our brave snake hunter sees that his boots are gone, as well as his socks, and that his bare feet are covered with painful and unpleasant-looking burns. And there are some fresh traces of what look like big cat footprints scattered around him in the mud. There's only one explanation for this unbelievable situation. When snakes come across predators or pretty much anything they consider dangerous, they forget all about eating. All of their available energy is directed towards escape. And if there's something in their stomach, it's better to spit it out as fast as possible and find something else to eat later at a safer move. When Dickie's legs had reached down into the snake's stomach, due to the acid, his boots had dissolved. Then his socks, and finally even the skin on his legs had started to melt. But around this time, on its way from somewhere to somewhere, a jaguar came across this spectacle, probably the same jaguar whose roar scared the shit out of Dickie the night before. Realizing that the big crazy wildcat is a tough rival to beat, and a man seasoned with capybara fur on his rubber boots is not a very tasty dish, the snake regurgitated its victim and disappeared into the waters of the Amazon. But still, there are a couple of points that I have some questions about. First, is it really possible for rubber boots to dissolve in anaconda stomach juices in just a couple of hours? Anaconda's gastric acid is, of course, a very powerful substance, capable of digesting even the bones of large animals. But this process requires days, usually, or sometimes even weeks. And second, was the jaguar in question so finicky that he passed by this perfect meal of a foolish and now unconscious New York City accountant simply because the man had already been barfed up by a snake? Perhaps the jaguar felt it was beneath him. I don't know. But okay, yeah, the jungle is a very unpredictable place. It's true, it's often difficult to know who is a friend and who's an enemy. Apparently, Mr. Harris makes it back to some semblance of civilization and to a hospital, where he also learns, oddly enough, that the award from the New York Zoological Society had actually been canceled a long time before. He just hadn't bothered to look closely at the date of the article's publication. But at this point, he really doesn't care at all. After spending another couple of weeks in South America, our hero returns to New York. Without an anaconda, without any money, and minus one finger. But with better understanding of the value of his own life and immense gratitude to an unknown wild jungle jaguar, which he's unlikely to ever meet again. In the U.S., Mr. Harris continues his rehabilitation from his injuries, with his present doctor being the one who told this story to my friend Matt. The whole case itself is totally screwball. Can you imagine, though, what an experience being swallowed alive by an anaconda and somehow managing to survive? But what's the truth here? And what is fiction? I'm curious as to your opinion. Let's consider this episode as a kind of attentiveness test. Tell us in the comments what exactly caused your suspicions as to the veracity of this story. Or if you believe it really happened, what convinced you and why? What do you think? You can show this video to your friends and maybe they can help us find an answer. 2 heads are better than 1, they say. And 3 heads certainly better than 2. I'll give you my final verdict in the next episode of this series if, of course, you liked it and you want more like this in the future. Vote, my friends. Thumbs up if you want this type of video to continue, or thumbs down if you're against it. And also, subscribe to the channel if for some unthinkable reason you haven't done so yet. And click on the bell button to always get notifications of our latest brand spanking new videos. Thanks for watching, and see you all soon.